Good morning, everybody. Welcome to Coffee with Jen and Eka. It is Eka today. I don't know if you've had the pleasure of having Eka join us for coffee before. I have, and it's really fun. Eka is another one of our fabulous Your Teen staffers, and Sharon's off today, and Eka is more than happy to come and chat with me. So yay, Eka. So first of all, Eka, did you bring a beverage to Mug Club today?
I did the same thing. My water bottle that used to have some kind of announcement on it, advertising, and then I dropped it and it started peeling. So my husband sanded off everything.
Nice. Now it's very neutral. Now it's just you, and nobody has to know what's in that either. So
right, there you go. And I would like to say, before we introduce the topic, that even though this is my third time here, for the first time, we're not talking about organizational skills. So thank you, Jen.
Hey, my pleasure. The problem with talking about organizational skills is that I would have nothing to contribute. So I have no problem talking about a different topic. So since you mentioned it, Eka, why don't you tell us, because you actually came up with this topic today and I jumped right on. What is it?
So our topic today is first, like the first time your child does something that either scares them or scares you, and all about how that works out, because basically as they grow from being little things to being full adults, there's a first. It seems like every day there's a first for everything. So this is what we're going to talk about. Some that were good, some that were maybe not so good, and things that for me were traumatic more for me than were for my girls. So
okay, so all right, so give me a for instance. Kick us off.
Okay, so I'm going to start with the for instance. When they were little, I don't know if you remember this, they would have play dates and you drove them there and picked them up. But sometimes if a friend lived close enough, you would walk them there, and then they got to an age where they wanted to walk by themselves to a friend's house. So then you would call that parent and you'd make this deal that you would stand on the sidewalk and then they would stand on their sidewalk and you would watch them.
Yeah, so you had visual on them.
Right, and you could see them. And so, as a parent, you wanted to you were fine walking them there, but they got to a point where they were like, I want to do this by myself. And it was one of the first things of letting go. I remember, I think it was like second grade. It was one of the first things of letting go. And, and knowing that it was just going to they were going to ask for more, and they were going to push boundaries more, and you were going to have to let go. So that was my first example of the first time you let them do something that they wanted, or that, that they thought they were ready for, and that you were there for it. So what do you have, Jen?
All right, well, I'm going to jump us ahead a little bit into the teen years, because that's where most of my scarier as a parent firsts happened that I can remember. I think I don't remember a lot of their younger years. I'm just going to lay that out there. I know it happened. I have pictures of it, and I look at things, I'm like, I have no recollection of this. So I have to go to more recent memories for this. One of my scary firsts was the first time I allowed my newly minted teen to take public transportation on her own. Now, depending on where you live in the country, this is either like a what? At 13? That's a big deal. There are kids in New York City who start riding the public transportation to school when they're like 8, and parents and everybody's fine with that. And Europe, we won't even talk about Europe. Everybody does it. It's no big deal. But where we live, public transportation is not typically the preferred method. Most people drive. We live in a suburb, but we do have an RTA, and the kids think it's like a novelty. They're like, can I go on the train and take the train to see the movie? And in this particular case, she was going with a boy, and they were going to meet some other friends there. So it was sort of like two firsts. It was a date, and it was public transportation, and my stomach was just in knots. But I'm going to lay a third layer on you. Get ready. I was actually okay with it. I was kind of thinking, this is a good thing. It's a kind of a safe risk. I know where they're going. My husband was really worried about it, and he was ready to say no. And I put the stake in the ground, and I said, no, they're old enough. They're ready. But so now it's all on me. And if something doesn't go well, I'm the bad parent. So it was a really, let's just say the next 2 hours, I did a lot of pacing, wore out the carpet. And then they did what teenagers do, which is after the movie, well, first of all, we said, call when you get there. They didn't. And this was before we had any kind of location device on their phones. Cell phones were still kind of newer then. We didn't have those fancy things. And then we said, okay, and come right home. And they didn't. After the movie, they said, we're hungry. Let's go get fries and milkshakes. Totally normal teenage behavior, but they weren't home at the time that I thought they should be home. So it was nerve-wracking. And when she finally walked in the door, I did what all parents do, which is I yelled at her because I was so relieved and angry. I'm like, I was so worried. Where were you? And I just totally became my mother, 100%. So that was a lot of firsts, all in one story. I packed a lot.
You know what? That's a lot. You know,
that is a lot.
Yeah. Public transportation and a date and not coming home when they're supposed to. And then also then, of course, telling your husband to chill. All of that.
Yeah. Yeah. Because then I have to act like I'm chill, but I wasn't chill. I have no chill.
I think all of that at the same time probably would have made me want to throw up.
Yeah, I didn't feel good. There is that. And I think you and I both deal with anxiety the same way, which is we're stress non-eaters, or like my stomach is all in my gut.
You know, 3 weeks ago on our behind the scenes.
Right. Jessica, she's behind the scenes. Maybe she'll pull that up and put that link in there for the one we talked about, how we deal with stress.
Right. Deal with stress.
Okay, so give me another, for instance.
Okay, so here's another one. So there was this rite of passage when you went to middle school and you were a swimmer. My older daughter was a swimmer. And what would happen would be that you would go with your group of swim friends to the library for like an hour and a half and do homework, and then you would walk to the pool from there. And
this sounds very wholesome.
It is, but you know what? This was exactly like this rite of passage, and it had been going on, like, you know, and it was a group. They were a really tight-knit group. They swam together all year round. So there was this group, and it included 7th graders, my newly minted 7th grader, and 8th graders together, boys and girls. But just like, once again, I drove her always to the pool. I did all this. And I said, you know what, I'll pick you up. And no, this was this rite of passage where they did this.
You got the first, no mom.
No mom. And it was the whole group. And, you know, and because they were really close, and I knew all the mothers, it wasn't as hard as I thought it was going to be, because we all made the decision together, even though we knew it wasn't going to be our decision to make, because this was what they did and it had been going on forever. I was able to contact all these mothers and be like, are we okay with this?
You had the illusion of control, and you had a support group.
Because we were all feeling that, because, you know, normally that's what we had done. We had always, you know, we had carpool and all that. And now this is what they did. They walked to the library, stayed there, and then walked to the pool. And after the first day, I was fine with it, but I guess it's the kind of the loss of control part of, you know, I'm sure you know, if I were to unravel this, it would be a lot on me more than on the actual situation. But I think that's a lot of parenting anyway. Don't you think, Jen? A lot of our anxiety and our, you know, more than was the reality versus what we have conjured up in our mind is so different.
Oh, totally. And I just also want to put out there that I was the teenager who didn't remember to call my mom when I went to a friend's house, or vanished for hours and didn't think she was worried about it until I'd come home and I'd get reamed out. And it was the worst is when my dad would come into my room and say, your mother is very upset.
Oh.
That's the worst. So, you know, they don't understand. They don't know that they're worrying us. It's not their job to manage our emotions about it. They should tell us when they're going someplace, but they're not going to remember. And you don't get it until you become a parent, and they won't get it till they're parents. So just if you're worried, if you think your kid will be different, I'm just going to tell you right now, they're not.
Right. Okay. What do you got?
I'm going to jump us ahead again a little tiny bit to the driving years.
Oh.
You know, that first solo drive, yes, really, it's awful. There's no getting around it. You will not breathe until they come back in the driveway. Both of my girls, you know, very careful, cautious drivers. I didn't worry about it too much, but and the first solo drive was something really short. Like, can you go return this book at the library for me, or pick up milk at the grocery store? Something really innocuous. where I knew they knew the route and it was going to be easy and safe. But you literally don't breathe from the time that car leaves the driveway till it comes back in. You don't know you haven't been breathing until all of a sudden your shoulders relax and you're like, okay, they made it. And it gradually gets better. But then there's another big first, which in our case was the first solo highway drive, like a longer one. And that just happened recently. And I have older teens, and one of my girls wanted to drive to Pittsburgh to see a friend, and it's a good 2.5 hour drive from here. And the PA Turnpike, if you've ever had the pleasure, is not filled with the world's most cautious or polite drivers.
And there's always, don't forget, and there's always, it's always orange barrel time too.
Always. There's 2 seasons, winter and under construction, right? We all know that. So yeah, that was a nail biter too. And so my only coping mechanism for that is I have to go be busy doing something else so that I don't think about it the whole time. And she was fine, and she navigated everything fine and came back in one piece. It was all good. But now, Eka, I think you have one who's a speed demon in your house, so you probably were even a little more concerned.
Oh, the speed demon, yeah. And not only that, but my oldest one, which I've referenced many times on these podcasts or these talks, is that not only is she a speed demon, but she's a daredevil, and she just is, she just is who she is. But talking about driving, she loves to drive, always loved to drive. And she drove home for Christmas when she was in college, and she was going to school in Rhode Island, and then she was driving back. And so she and my husband had set out this route for her to drive back to Rhode Island, and he was mapping it on, he was following her on the phone. And they had this long talk, and he's like, wait, she's going to New York City. Like, what's she doing in New York City? She takes the wrong turn, and he's driving her, and she's like in Manhattan, and she's like driving like into the Bronx, and he's like, what is she doing? And it turns out that she didn't tell us, but she promised one of her friends from college that she would pick him up.
And did she know that you were following her?
Yeah. Okay. She's like, yeah, Dad, got it. I'll just, cross over here, and I'll, into Connecticut, and, and it turns out that, yeah, she had said like, yeah, I'll pick you up on my way back to Cleveland. I'll pick you up, and had gone into New York City.
Wow.
I personally would not be driving to New York City at 11 o'clock at night, and this whole thing.
God grant me the confidence of a teenager, a newly licensed driving teenager. They just think, I got the license, I know what I'm doing. And then you and I both know that's not the case, because we remember all the
we're following. Right. And he's like yelling at the phone, what are you doing?
Oh my gosh.
Then she stopped, and then he could see that she stopped, and he finally said, like, I'm following you. What are you doing in New York City? She goes, oh, did I forget to tell you? I'm picking up Sean, and we're no, you didn't tell me, because I probably would have said, don't go to New York City.
Right. Of course. They know that. They know what not to tell us too. Right. Eka, do you want to just give put the bow on this and tell everybody what that daughter does for a living now, just so they know?
Yeah. This crazy daughter of mine is now a commercial airline pilot.
Yes.
So all of that daredevil, fast speed, all of that has translated into the fact that she flies jets. And she's the first officer, and if you look in the cockpit of a major airplane, she's in the cockpit,
which I think is awesome. And she totally channeled this into a positive way. But it didn't happen overnight. And you had to do all the worrying along the way.
Right. But you know what? I'm going to say first. How about this one for a first? I was on her first commercial flight. Awesome. I snuck on there. Like, my husband got me a ticket, and I got on her first flight.
I love it.
And when we landed in Newark, she came out of the cockpit, and she saw me. And we both started crying, and she was like, what are you doing here? And I was like, I wanted to be on your first flight. So,
and I love that you didn't tell her so that she wouldn't be nervous.
Right. You know what? She had more, she didn't need to be worried that her mother was on her flight, because I knew it was going to, I talked to her the night before, and she's like, I have a 6 o'clock, a 6 a.m. flight. I got to be at the airport at 5. It's my first flight, and I'm flying to Newark. And little did she know, I was at the hotel attached to the airport going, oh, really, babe? Good luck tomorrow.
Oh, I love that.
So it was a crazy day. So yeah, no, she didn't need to know. because I know the kind of kid she is. She would have like come and found me and all that kind of stuff. No, that's all you, girl.
I
So,
love
yeah,
it.
so these first, I mean, some of them are really well. They're all, I think, a little bit scary as a parent, don't you think, Jen? I mean,
Yeah, even the ones that you're happy about, it can be a little bit tinged with other emotions. I think we rarely feel just one way about any of these things. You know, like going to, maybe it's their first big dance that they're going to, or you know, really anything that shows those steps that they're taking toward becoming independent adults, which is what we want. It's what we want. It's what we're working toward. But we know we're working ourselves out of a job.
I know, but isn't that what we're supposed to do? With
Yes.
You raise them to leave you,
Right, and that kind of sucks. I mean, if you did your job right, they leave you, but
right? But at the same
well,
time,
they visit.
you visit, but you know what? But those first are really I don't think I realized how much it was going to be, like how scary it was going to be. I mean, I think I'm a little neurotic anyway, but I mean, I just think that those first sometimes they need to make them, and sometimes you need to push them.
Yeah. Oh yeah. I had one who didn't want to go down a slide, you know, and I was like, but no, this is what you do at this age. You go down the slide. She was like, no, I'm not really interested in that. You know, so yeah, sometimes we do the pushing, sometimes we do the pulling back. It's a delicate dance that we're doing with them.
Well, and the other thing is, because you have two girls also, Jen, don't you find that the first for the second ones are like, oh yeah, whatever, you know? I mean, there are
for me, not for them, but
right,
for me.
Not for them, but
I'm like, I know, I've been to this movie.
That,
it's all good, you know, right? Yes.
Right. Like, so the second one, when she wanted to go on public transportation.
Yeah. I'm like, yeah, we know how this works. It's fine, you know? And I love the fact that, you know, with the first one, I don't know if you feel this way. I tend to over communicate, give too many directions. Like, now remember, you have to have exact change, and you have to pay when you get on, when you go there, and you have to pay when you get off, and you come back. And they're like, blah, 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 they're not listening. And the second one, I'm like, okay, have a good time. We'll see you when you get back. And sometimes the second one comes back. She's like, could you have told me I needed to have exact change? I didn't have it. I'm like, oh, I forgot. Yeah, sorry.
Well, it is. It's so crazy because it's almost like, unless you have your kids really close together, because mine are 4 years apart, so it's almost like I raised two only children. But you know, so it's kind of crazy how you it's almost like you raised two only children. You know, like they always say, "Oh my gosh, you got to do that! I never got to do that." Or the other one will be like, "What?" You know, because obviously we'll be like, "Oh, that didn't work for the first one, so we're not going to do the second." Or well, you kind of do. I mean, because of that 4 years. And so sometimes I feel like, did I really raise them in the same house?
Okay. I think this is what our next topic is going to be. Whether it might be you again next week. I can't remember if Sharon's here or not, but I think the next topic should be, what did you do differently with your second? If you have more than one kid, what did you do differently with your second or subsequent kids? And for whatever reason. So, all right. We're going to leave it there because, you know, Eka's busy. She's got stuff to do. She doesn't have time for anything.
Oh, wait, we have other jobs, don't we?
We do have other jobs. But we are glad you joined us today, and tune in next week and see. Here's the cliffhanger. Will it be Eka or will it be Sharon?
All right. Thanks, everybody.
Good to see you.
Bye.
Have a good day.